How's it going, good people? My name is Callum Morrison and this is Just One Plugin, the series where I take a song and try and recreate the guitar tone from that song using exactly that, just one plugin. So today we're going to be looking at a hit song from Mastodon's early career. We're going to try and recreate Bill Kelliher's tone on the Mastodon song March of the Fire Ants. If you only just got into Mastodon and are only really familiar with their more modern works, you might actually end up being quite surprised that this is the same band. Though Mastodon have become known as this kind of powerhouse in the modern prog metal scene, originally their sound was quite different. They were a very sludgy band, very aggressive compared to what they sound like today. The very clear cut and easy to define guitar tones were not seen on these older albums, and it was like really a massive, like really fuzzy, fizzy distortion, and it's something that I enjoy greatly. I'll be honest, I'm definitely more of a fan of Mastodon's kind of crack the sky sort of sound, the sound that they had going on around that time. And that seems to be a lot closer to what modern Mastodon sounds like than on their first two albums. So, with that being said, this band might be an interesting band to revisit at a later date. Maybe looking at a more modern song. I spoke before in the Joe Duplantier Gojira video about the difficulty of trying to work out where one guitar player's tone ends and another begins. It's very much the same case here, but that being said, I learned Bill Kelliher's part, I researched Bill Kelliher's gear, and so this is why Bill Kelliher is in the title. But you could argue again that this is maybe less of a distinctive recreating of Bill Kelliher's tone, and it's really more of a sort of emulation of the overall Mastodon tone. So let's talk about Bill's gear. Guitar wise, in the early years, Bill was using various Les Pauls and Explorers that he had equipped with Seymour Duncan pickups, I believe, and he was using old school Marshall amps. Both him and Brent used various like Plexis and JCM 800s. Now in the modern day, Bill's gear that he's using, he's got a signature line with ESP that he's had a lot of success with. And he's also had a lot of success with Friedman amps. He's been using his signature Butter Slacks, I believe it's called. Great name. For a couple of years now. And he also used some of the Friedman JJ models. Effects wise, modern day Mastodon, Bill uses quite a lot of effects. He's using an Axe effects for a lot of them, but he also has quite a lot of hardware pedals for things like octavers, various fuzz pedals. But back in the days of early Mastodon, that really wasn't the case. On the first album, there's maybe some guitar parts with some delays, but aside from that, it was just meaty distortion with some kind of boost. I'm not sure exactly what type. I'm gonna assume some kind of tube screamer type pedal, boost in the front end of a JCM 800. So with that in mind, let's go take a look at how we're going to recreate this distinctively older Mastodon song's tone. Okay, so before we dive into the preset, I want to talk a little bit about the guitar, because in 100% honesty, this was probably the most difficult part to work out. In his early career, Bill used Gibson Les Pauls and Explorers that came equipped with Seymour Duncan distortion pickups, Seymour Duncan Invaders. Some of the guitars had just like whatever stock Gibson pickups came in there. The thing about this song is that it's tuned quite low. So it's tuned a drop A. So everything on the guitar is tuned down a tone, except for the bottom string, which is tuned a hell of a lot lower. So basically what you have there is what would normally be a power chord in standard tuning becomes an octave. I have a Les Paul tribute guitar, which you would assume would be the natural go-to choice for this, right? But the thing is, that guitar has Gibson Dirty Fingers pickups in it. Those pickups seem, for me anyway, to get incredibly muddy when you start drop tuning them. So I couldn't really get this tone to work at all. It was just coming out a complete mess, and so I couldn't use it. And so what I went for was a LTD EC 1000. It's a great guitar. I love that guitar. It's the same one that I used in the Tom Morello video. So the reason I opted for that was because Bill, I'm not sure if it's still in production, but Bill did have a guitar from ESP that was the same shape. It was based on the Eclipse. It came with lace sensors, which he was using at the time, but now I believe his signature's gone back to using Seymour Duncan distortions. It was, this guitar has EMGs, so not really the right pickup, but it sounds a hell of a lot better in drop A than any of my other guitars did, especially the Les Paul, and it still kind of remained the most appropriate. So anyway, with that being said, let's check out the tone. So let's go to the pedal board first. You can see again we've got the noise gate on. The drive pedal not pushing the level to the limit, but we're leaving some of that drive in. We're not taking it all out. That way we're still getting like kind of a little bit of extra distortion from the drive, which creates that kind of fizzy thing that Mastodon have going on those early albums. The presence on this is pretty high, and the treble is pretty high as well. That's again in keeping with the kind of fizzy element of the tone. The bass is pretty low because you're drop tuned so much. You don't want to have loads of bass in there. It's just going to end up sounding muddy and boomy. You want to make sure that you dial that back. And then the mids, a little bit boosted, but not crazy. The master and the preamp settings here, they're both pretty high, you know, so that's gonna push the amp, you know, or as it's being emulated. And for a cab, we went for the Mars PRM75. Basically, that's emulating like a modern Marshall cab with 75 watt speakers in it. It's pretty much the standard Marshall cab these days. And that's it. Once again, there's really not a lot going on with this tone. It's super simple. So let's get into the recording. What you're going to hear a little bit of the original track. You're going to hear a little bit of my track in isolation. And then you're going to hear a little bit of my track on top of the original song to give it some context. We'll cycle around this 3 or 4 times over a couple of sections of the song, and then at the end we'll just have a little chat about it. So without further ado, let's get into the song. So that's it. I think this is a pretty good tone. I think it hits the nail on the head. Maybe not specifically the Bill Kelliher tone, but like great early Mastodon. And yeah, it sounds okay on its own. It's definitely not the kind of thing I think I would dial in to try and use personally, but it sounds fine if you're into that like kind of fizzier, fuzzier type of tone. It sounds great when playing along to the track. It doesn't sound out of place, fits in quite nicely. I think it would have been cool if I had a guitar that was more appropriate. I think if my Les Paul didn't have those dirty fingers pickups that are super muddy when you start to down tune, if that had like Seymour Duncan distortions or something, which is what I believe his guitars come with now, that would have been really cool to have. But unfortunately I don't have that. We work with what we got. It was the best guitar for the job. Ultimately, I don't think it sounds a million miles away. And I think that getting the right pickups maybe would have got me a little bit closer, but in the grand scheme of things, maybe not all that closer. That's what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do you think I was close? Do you think I was a million miles away? What would you have done? What would you have used to make it better? If you're enjoying this comment, please be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. That way YouTube might let you know the next time I upload a video. And give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And I guess give it a dislike if you didn't. Please don't. That's all from me though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.